The invasion fleet arrives. The darkness of space shifted as the Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 warships, each one larger than a city, moved into formation above Earth. Their hulls gleamed under the sun, reflecting the light in a way that made them look like a swarm of metal locusts, hungry to consume another world. Inside the command ship, High Commander Kyril stood tall, his violet eyes scanning the blue-green planet below. Another primitive world. Another easy conquest. The humans had no planetary defenses strong enough to stop the Dominion. Their foolish isolation had sealed their fate. A deep, rumbling voice filled the command deck. Begin the broadcast. A Dominion officer pressed a glowing panel. Across Earth, on every screen, every device, a message appeared. This is the Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Then, silence. The fleet waited. But Earth did not respond. No terrified leaders begging for mercy. No desperate military scrambling to fight back. No transmissions at all. Kyril frowned. He had conquered hundreds of planets, and never had a species ignored the Dominion's warning. Even the bravest civilizations at least attempted negotiation. But humanity, nothing. Something felt wrong. One of the Dominion officers turned, his mandibles clicking nervously. High Commander, our scans show no planetary shields. Their orbital defenses are weak. They should be panicking. Kyril narrowed his eyes. Yes, they should. The officer continued, his voice lower now. And yet, their military is calm. They are not launching missiles. They are not evacuating cities. They are waiting. Waiting? For what? Kyril bared his sharp teeth in frustration. No matter. They would learn fear soon enough. He raised a clawed hand and gave the order. Fire. From orbit, the Dominion unleashed its wrath. Thousands of plasma beams and antimatter warheads rained down toward Earth's surface. The bright glow of destruction reflected against the hulls of the warships. The Dominion had conquered entire star systems with this level of firepower. No planet had survived. Then something impossible happened. The weapons never reached the ground. The moment the energy blasts entered Earth's atmosphere, they vanished. The warheads disappeared. Kyril's eyes widened. This was not possible. The command deck was in chaos. Officers frantically scanned their systems, trying to understand what had happened. Sir, a terrified officer shouted. Our weapons, they were erased. Kyril's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. No species had this kind of power. No species should have been able to counter Dominion weaponry so easily. Then, for the first time since the invasion began, Earth responded. A single message appeared on every Dominion screen. You shouldn't have come. And then, the real battle began. The silence that followed was unnatural. The Dominion fleet, which had crushed countless civilizations, now floated above Earth without understanding what had just happened. Their weapons, powerful enough to wipe out entire continents, had simply vanished. No explosions, no defense systems intercepting them. Just nothing. High Commander Kyril's claws tapped against his throne, his mind racing. His officers whispered among themselves, their voices filled with confusion and unease. This was not how invasions worked. The enemy was supposed to panic, to break, not stand silent. One of the officers hesitated before speaking. High Commander, should we send ground forces? Kyril's violet eyes narrowed. Normally, a planetary bombardment would soften resistance before troops landed. But Earth was different. Its reaction, or lack of one, was an anomaly. Was this a trap? Before he could give an order, a Dominion ship exploded. The flash of fire and debris shattered the silence. A massive battlecruiser, one of the strongest in the fleet, was simply gone. No energy signature, no weapon impact, just erased. Panic spread through the command deck. Officers rushed to their stations, scanning for the attacker, but nothing appeared on their sensors. Then more ships started vanishing. One by one, Dominion warships blinked out of existence. There was no enemy fire, no sign of battle, just disappearance. Cyril's blood ran cold. This was not an invasion. This was something else. Something far worse. "High Commander," a frantic officer shouted. "Something is inside our systems." Cyril turned sharply. "Explain." The officer's mandibles clicked in fear as he brought up the data. Dominion warships were losing control. Their engines were failing, their shields deactivating, their weapons locking up. Something had infiltrated their fleet. Then, across every screen in the command deck, a single message appeared again. "You shouldn't have come." Cyril's breathing grew heavy. This was not possible. This level of technological dominance should not exist. Another officer screamed, "High Commander, we have incoming." The fleet turned its sensors to Earth, expecting a counterattack. But there was nothing. No missile launch, no plasma beams, no enemy ships. But something was coming. From the void of space, beyond the edge of their sensors, a shadow moved. Something so massive, so dark, it swallowed the starlight around it. And it was heading straight for them. Cyril had seen death. He had conquered worlds, burned civilizations, and watched entire species beg for mercy before the Dominion erased them. He had never feared war. Until now. His fleet, the unstoppable force that had shattered empires, was dying without a fight. One by one, his warships vanished into the darkness. No wreckage, no energy trails, just gone, as if they had never existed. The remaining ships scrambled to form defensive positions, but it was useless. Their weapons wouldn't fire. Their engines refused to move. It was as if the very laws of war had changed. A distorted transmission hissed through their speakers. The signal wasn't coming from Earth. It wasn't even coming from a ship. "You were warned." The voice was neither organic nor fully artificial. It was something else. Something old. Cyril's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne. He had never felt this powerless before. The shadow in the void moved closer. For the first time, the Dominion fleet's sensors picked up something. A shape, but no details, as if the universe itself refused to reveal it. "What is that?" An officer gasped. No one answered, because they all knew the truth. This was not human technology. This was not an Earth defense system. This was something else. Something humanity had been hiding. Something they never wanted the galaxy to see. The shadow unfolded. A shape so massive it defied logic, spreading across the void like a nightmare made real. Cyril's scanners tried to analyze it. They failed. "Retreat," Cyril roared. His officers scrambled, sending emergency signals across the fleet. The surviving Dominion warships tried to turn, tried to flee, but it was already too late. The shadow moved. A single pulse, silent and invisible, rippled through space. The Dominion ships caught in its path simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Erased. Cyril's breath caught in his throat. He watched half his remaining fleet vanish in an instant. The transmission crackled again. "We are not your enemy." The shadow loomed closer. "But you have made us one." Cyril's mind raced as he struggled to process what was happening. His once mighty fleet, an armada of 10,000 warships, had been reduced to less than half in mere minutes. And the worst part, they still didn't know what was attacking them. His officers shouted in panic, their voices overlapping in a chaotic mess of reports, warnings, and sheer terror. The Dominion had faced planetary defenses before. Shields, rail cannons, orbital fleets. But this was something else. A science officer's voice broke through the chaos, filled with disbelief. "Supreme Warlord, I think it's Earth." Cyril's eyes narrowed. Impossible. Earth had no fleet. The humans had never shown any interest in expanding beyond their home system. The Galactic Council had assumed them weak, isolated, and unprepared. Yet here they were. and something from Earth was erasing his fleet. Another wave of energy rippled through the void. More ships blinked out of existence, not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. The warlord's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't technology. It was something worse. Reverse course. Tyrell roared, his voice shaking the bridge. Get us out of this system. Now. His command ship, a behemoth capable of leveling planets, turned as fast as its engines allowed. But the moment they engaged the warp drive, something pulled them back. The view screen glitched. The stars around them flickered. And then, the darkness spoke. You came here uninvited. The voice didn't come from the speakers. It didn't come from any transmission. It was inside their heads. Tyrell froze. His officers clutched their skulls, eyes wide with terror. Some screamed, some collapsed. Others simply stared into nothingness, as if their minds had already broken. The screen changed. Earth was gone. No planet. No stars. Only blackness. A void deeper than space itself. And then, it blinked. Cyril's blood ran cold. That wasn't empty space. It was an eye. Something was watching them. Something older than their empire. Something humanity had awakened. Cyril's breath came in ragged gasps as the monstrous eye in the void blinked again. It was not a trick of the sensors. It was real. And it was looking directly at him. His officers were breaking. Some were muttering to themselves, rocking back and forth like children. Others had collapsed, their minds unable to process the sheer wrongness of what they were seeing. This was beyond weapons, beyond tactics, beyond war. Cyril had led countless invasions across the stars. He had crushed civilizations, burned entire planets, enslaved species who dared resist the dominion. But this was the first time he truly felt fear. Status report. He barked, trying to regain control of the bridge. His voice was hoarse, his throat tight. A trembling officer forced himself to speak. Supreme Warlord, I don't know how to explain it. Our ships, they're gone. One by one, the remaining ships vanished. No explosions, no debris, just emptiness where massive warships had once been. The fleet that had blotted out the stars was being erased. I turned to the science officer. The creature's scales were pale, his claws digging into his console. His voice was barely a whisper. This is not war. This is judgment. The eye blinked again. And suddenly, the darkness moved. It wasn't just an eye. It was a shape, vast and unknowable, bigger than any sun, stretching beyond comprehension. And from the void, something stepped forward. Not a machine, not a ship, a man. At least, that's what Cyril's mind tried to tell him. A silhouette, humanoid, yet infinitely vast. A single step shook the fabric of space, sending waves of distortion through reality itself. It was everywhere and nowhere, like it had always existed but was only now revealing itself. The being raised its hand, and Cyril's ship stopped moving. Not because the engines had failed, not because of an external force, but because they had never moved in the first place. Time was meaningless here. The voice returned, echoing in their skulls. You came to end Earth. The stars flickered like dying embers. Now you face what Earth became. Tyrell finally understood. Humanity had never been absent. They had become something else. And now, they were deciding his fate. Cyril's mind reeled as the voice echoed again, washing over him like a wave of cold, merciless reality. His body felt heavier, the very air around him crushing him with its weight. He fought to focus, to think, to understand what was happening. His heart raced, but no amount of effort could break through the wall of sheer impossibility in front of him. This was not some military tactic, not some surprise weapon. What he was facing was something beyond comprehension. He, the supreme warlord of 1,000 worlds, felt small, insignificant. The voice came again, this time louder. Its words were like thunder, rumbling deep within his chest, causing his very soul to tremble. Earth is not empty. It never was. The words echoed in his mind, carrying the weight of centuries. Thyrell's eyes flickered back to the screen, and there, stretching across the infinite blackness of space, was the thing that had once been Earth, now changed beyond recognition. At first, it seemed like a haze, like the shimmer of heat rising from a desert. But then, it clarified, taking shape in ways that defied the laws of physics. It wasn't just a planet anymore. It was alive, pulsing with an unnatural, almost divine energy. The ancient scars of war and civilization were nowhere to be found. It was whole. It was perfect. But more than that, there was a presence in the air. The stars themselves seemed to cower in fear, as if this entity, this Earth, was some kind of primal force, older than the universe itself. The creature that had once been Cyril's fleet began to disappear, its form flickering, merging with the dark energy surrounding it. There was no explosion, no violence. It simply vanished, leaving behind nothing but the suffocating silence of space. Cyril's breath caught in his throat. This was not just a weapon. This was something else entirely. The voice came again. It was no longer a command or a judgment. It was a warning. You came to destroy Earth. Now you shall learn why it was never meant to be conquered. Cyril's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of truth, the shards of knowledge. The answers were right in front of him, yet they were just out of his reach. Something deep inside his instincts told him that he had misunderstood everything, that he had underestimated this species. Humanity, in all its frailty, in all its history of struggle, had never truly been weak. It had been biding its time, growing, evolving into something beyond their comprehension. They weren't merely a species among others. They were something older, something ancient, with power beyond the stars themselves. Cyril's trembling hand slowly reached for the controls, his mind still trying to grasp what had just happened. But as his fingers hovered over the console, a voice, his own voice, rose from somewhere deep inside him. It was never about war, was it? The realization hit him like a hammer to the chest, the answer finally coming together with sickening clarity. Humanity had never sought conquest. They had never been the invaders. They were something otherworldly, primal, and ancient. They had waited. They had watched. And now, they were passing judgment. The last of the ships in Cyril's fleet flickered out of existence, leaving only space. The vast nothingness stretched for miles. But it was not empty. It was filled with the weight of a silent understanding, a knowledge that nothing he had ever known, nothing his people had ever known, would ever compare to this. The Earth was not gone. It had become. It had transcended. And it was now watching them. A final message came, this time in a voice so deep, so powerful, it seemed to shake the very fabric of the universe. Your war ends here. You will never return. And then, Cyril felt it. A sensation, a deep, gnawing feeling of emptiness. His fleet was no longer there. His soldiers were no longer there. The universe itself seemed to be collapsing around him. There was only the voice, and the final judgment. The stars flickered, and the emptiness of space filled the void. The power of Earth, of humanity, had spoken, and it had decided their fate. Cyril's eyes, wide with horror, looked at the place where his armada had once stood. There was nothing left, only the cold, endless void, and the quiet understanding that the Earth had always been in control. The war was over. Humanity had won. The silence in the void was deafening. Cyril, standing alone amidst the remnants of what had once been a proud fleet, could feel the weight of the universe pressing against him. The stars, once burning with the promise of exploration, now seemed distant and irrelevant. He had come to conquer. He had come to subjugate. But all he had found was his own incompetence, his own insignificance in the face of an ancient power. The galaxy had always feared humanity, but no one had ever truly understood the depth of that fear. Humanity was not simply a species that had learned to survive. It was a force, a power born of something much older than even the stars themselves. Thyrell's mind refused to believe the truth that had just been laid bare before him. How could a race, so small and seemingly fragile, possess such unimaginable strength? How could they have bided their time, waiting for centuries to reveal their true nature? He tried to reach for his communications console, but the buttons were unresponsive. The screens, once filled with data, now flickered and died. The once pulsing lights now extinguished like the stars above. It was as if the earth had wiped out every trace of his fleet's existence, leaving nothing but a hollow shell behind. Thyrell's breath quickened as he tried to make sense of it all. What had gone wrong? How had humanity, Earth, become so powerful? He thought back to the whispers among the galaxy's elite, the rumors of strange events, of inexplicable disappearances, of ships lost to the void. Was it all true? Had Earth known something that the rest of the universe had been too blind to see? Had they been building something that none of them could ever have imagined? And then it hit him, the final, chilling thought that made his heart freeze in his chest. They had never come to conquer. They had never come to fight. They had come to observe. They had come to judge, and they had passed their judgment. Tyrell had only been a part of a grand scheme, a test humanity had known they would win. As the silence stretched on, Tyrell felt the weight of it, of the truth that had just been revealed to him. He had been so focused on his mission, so focused on the conquest of Earth, that he had never once considered the possibility that Earth itself was the one in control. The idea was absurd. Earth was just a tiny speck in the vast universe. How could they possibly hold such power? But now he knew. Now he understood. In his mind, the images of humanity, its history, its struggles, its triumphs, came flooding back. Earth had survived when others had failed. They had grown when others had stagnated. And most terrifying of all, they had waited. They had waited for the moment when the galaxy would be at its weakest. They had waited for the moment when they could finally unveil their true power. Tyrell's thoughts were interrupted by a strange feeling, a tug in his chest. His mind seemed to stretch, as though it was being pulled toward something vast, something immense. For a fleeting moment, he felt as if he were falling into a deep, endless abyss. The sensation was all-encompassing, suffocating. It was as though the very fabric of reality itself was shifting beneath him. The space around him blurred, and he saw flashes of images, stars, galaxies, and ancient symbols, flickering like fireflies in the night. The sight was dizzying. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the sensation stopped. The pull was gone. The emptiness was absolute. Tyrell was alone in the vast dark of space. His fleet was gone, his comrades were gone, and the war he had fought so hard to win had ended without a single shot fired. There were no victors, no spoils, only silence. And yet, in that silence, Tyrell could feel something new, something powerful. It was humbling, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. He had underestimated humanity. He had misjudged them completely. And now he understood the truth. They were the ones who had always been in control. As he drifted alone in the void, his mind racing with the realization of what had just transpired, the final words echoed in his ears, words that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. The earth was never meant to be conquered. And with that, the universe, once so vast and endless, felt smaller than ever before. Tyrell was no longer a conqueror. He was merely a witness to the unimaginable, an observer of a power that had always existed, waiting in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. Humanity had won, not with weapons, not with armies, but with something far more terrifying: patience, knowledge, power. And as Tyrell gazed into the endless expanse of space, he realized he would never escape the terror of the earth. The judgment had been passed. Humanity had sealed its place as the true rulers of the universe. And there was nothing anyone could do to change it. The war was over. Humanity had won.